Welcome back to the Wyatt Claypool Show, everyone. Today, we're going to mix things up a little bit, and I'm going to be talking about the US presidential election that just happened yesterday. Still some votes to count in certain states, but Donald Trump has decisively won in the Electoral College and is likely to win the popular vote as well. But I'm not going to be talking about the US election from the perspective of America. I want to talk about it from the perspective of Canada, and specifically all of the liberal NDP media commentators and politicians who cluelessly thought that Kamala Harris had this in the bag. I tweeted this just now, and I had said similar things last night, and I think it sums things up pretty well from at least the media standpoint. A lot of Canadian lefty commentators who pride themselves on their nuanced political analysis need to wonder if they were ever good in the first place. So many of these people who think that they are wise sages about how politics really works and what the average voter values completely missed the appeal of Donald Trump and thought that Kamala Harris must be super popular, even more popular than Joe Biden was in 2020. She was going to obviously overperform how Hillary Clinton did in 2016. She's like Barack Obama. She's not. It was so obvious she wasn't. There were so many public data points to prove that she just wasn't going to win. Usually, presidential elections where the Democrats only have like a 1 or to 3% registration advantage nationally over the Republicans tend to win those ones. If it's like +8 Democrat registration imbalance, then that's like an election where like Obama just has a landslide victory in 2008. In 2024, there was a 3%, a 3-point advantage for Republican registrations compared to Democrat registrations. And there were people who thought that Kamala Harris was going to win Iowa because of an Ann Seltzer poll that showed that somehow Kamala Harris was going to win Iowa, which Trump won by large margins in 2020 and 2016, that Kamala Harris was going to win it by 3. She got blown out in Iowa. She lost by 14 points. This is where you have to be able to understand what is a good poll and what is a bad poll. If a poll doesn't even make sense to you at all, like if you walked through Iowa, does it feel +3 Kamala Harris, Democrat? It doesn't. You don't even have to go to Iowa to know that that wasn't right. There are so many really ridiculously stupid takes from Canadian media commentators pretending like it's a shocking loss for Kamala Harris. You guys live in a bubble. You truly think that people vote for the most professorial candidate, the one who has that very moderate aesthetic. Kamala Harris is a aesthetically moderate candidate. Even though on policy, Trump is arguably way more moderate than Kamala Harris is. Kamala Harris is actually more on the Bernie Sanders left of the Democratic Party, literally was rated as the most liberal senator by a nonpartisan group back when she was still in the Senate prior to 2020. And what she was going to have a mass appeal in this country. I don't get it. But again, these people live in such a bubble that they assume that, I like an academia friendly candidate. I like a candidate who talks like a bureaucrat, talks like an academic. That must mean that every voter's like that. There are voters who live outside of like Arlington. There are voters who live outside of Concord, New Hampshire. There are voters who live outside of Buffalo, New York, and like Albany. You guys have to understand this. And the thing is that these same people in Canada get elections wrong all the time. I know BC was close. I think I was pretty right on BC. I thought the Conservatives were going to win by like a couple of seats or so. But like that one was a close one, and it's more understandable to not get it right when there was a massive money disadvantage for the Conservatives and it's harder to draw out your vote. But goodness, like usually I'm decently well within the range of realistic possibilities. But even these people in Canada think that like Pierre Poilievre isn't popular and that Justin Trudeau might be able to make a comeback. These people are delusional. They don't actually talk to real voters. I find it fascinating. So many people pontificate on politics and like analyze polling and whatnot and voter behavior who've never door knocked in their life, who have never taken a phone call with a voter. They don't actually know how voters think. Some of them are actually quite good, but usually they're not in the commentary business, like Janet Brown. But let's get into some of these other takes from people in Canadian media. We have Erica Iffel here, who is legitimately a very racist far left commentator, but she works for the Hill Times somehow. And when I say racist, go look at her timeline. Type in white people into Erica Iffel's timeline and you'll know what I mean, or really anyone. She also called somebody who was like a brown woman who disagreed with her fair skinned, because you're not actually brown if you disagree with Erica Iffel. So she says, as I've been saying, Gaza matters in Michigan, even if that's not like the rest of the country, but each county has its own political issues that are oriented around the people who live there. And she is responding to this person whose name is Austerity is Theft on Twitter, just to show how much of a socialist bubble Erica Iffel is living in. And they say, the margin in Michigan is down to 90,000 votes. There are over 200,000 Muslim votes in the state and more than 88,000 Lebanese Americans of any faith. Trump won Muslim voters. Morons. He literally won Muslim voters, because it turns out Muslim voters, and more so just Arab Americans in general, don't care about defending Hamas. Yes, there is a sub-faction of Arab Americans who might vote that way, and actually because Harris didn't pander enough to specific radicals on the ground, she ended up being beaten by the Green candidate Jill Stein in certain precincts in Dearborn, Michigan, but Trump still won them overall. But the idea that Erica Iffel thinks that, no, actually Harris just needed to be more pro-Hamas, more pro-Gaza, as she would probably put it, that's why she would have lost Michigan? No, she wouldn't have won Michigan by doing that. She would have lost every other state even harder. Why do you think currently, I should bring this up on screen, I have to load this up quick. Why do you think that even in deep blue states, Trump gained massively in some of the bluest district of blue states? Trump won Florida, which some Democrats were pretending, some liberal commentators in Canada were pretending could be in the pocket of Kamala Harris on the night of the election, that she could win Florida or Texas. Donald Trump won Florida by a wider margin than she won New York State. He won it. He came closer. He had a more than double margin of victory in Florida than she did in New Jersey. And here's the Bronx. Remember, Trump did a rally in the Bronx while he was on trial. He had that court case in New York State. Harris only got 72.7% of the vote in the Bronx, and Trump got 27.3%. Oh, it's a big victory for Harris in the Bronx. Biden had an 83% of the vote in the Bronx last election. Trump only had 15%. This is a 23% swing. And it's not because Trump did the rally there exactly. That probably helped him out quite a bit. Shows he cares, although he kind of had to do a rally there. He wasn't, I don't think, even allowed to leave a certain area of the city. It was pretty crazy. But like, it's because maybe you're out of touch. Maybe people wanted a candidate that they knew. Maybe they didn't want Joe Biden swapped out with Kamala Harris 3 months before the election. Joe Biden is an infinitely better candidate than Kamala Harris, even at the age of 81. That guy can generate clips. And this matters a lot, generating clips. Remember the Kamala Harris-Trump debate? Does anyone remember a single thing Harris said in that entire debate? She won in with the goal of trying to show Americans who she is, because that was the biggest complaint with independent voters. They don't know who she is. She goes into that debate, and then there's all these liberal commentators, all these lefty NDP liberal commentators in Canada. She's like, she's so good. Oh my goodness, she was so good at the debate. She beat Trump. Oh, she was so good. And Trump had a weird debate performance with the eating the cats and the dog comment. But guess what? Nobody actually talked about Kamala Harris's performance after that debate. She didn't say anything. So independent voters, they can say, yeah, Trump's a weird guy still. But you don't know anything about Harris at all. You want a candidate who can generate clips. Joe Biden actually can generate clips. He actually has some charisma to him. Remember when we put on that Trump hat? He has a kind of an instinct for what a crowd wants to see. He knows how to talk to people in such a way that he can be funny, or he can, be snarky or whatever. Harris doesn't have any of that. But you get all these liberals in Canada are like, oh, Harris was so good. Oh, there's nothing wrong with the campaign. I think they were talking about it on The View today, but I've also heard it on other Canadian outlets. They were like, oh, she just ran a great campaign, class act campaign. although she was calling her opponent a Nazi the entire time. How do you concede a race to somebody that you've been calling a Nazi? If anything, if Harris was serious about that, she shouldn't concede at all, because apparently this guy's Hitler. Oh, my goodness. There's so many unhinged takes. The funny thing is, I always disagree with people when they say Justin Trudeau's a communist. He's not a communist. He is very much like a lefty, socialistic type prime minister. I do jab David Eby as being a communist, but that's far more tongue-in-cheek, and it's more so that if anyone says, can you prove he's a communist? I will always just say, I can't prove he's a capitalist either, so you tell me. But I guess we can move on to another take. We have Bruce Arthur here from the Toronto Star. He says, in response to this guy saying, stock markets at record highs, low unemployment, wage growth exceeds inflation, the best handling of inflation of any G7 nation, energy independence, and I can go on and on. What's funny about that comment immediately from that Brett guy that Bruce Arthur is responding to is that isn't Canada supposed to have the best inflation record? If you mess with the metrics, every G7 country can pretend it has a great record on inflation. It's been pretty bad in both Canada and the US because there was massive inflation in 2021, 2022, and 2023. And now in 2024, they're like, oh, it's only 2%. The problem is that 2% is compounding on years where it was like 7%, 9%, and 6%. Anyways, but here's what Bruce Arthur says. Information systems are broken. Inflation is toxic, even with wage growth. Rural voters are spiraling into a different world, and men are in an increasingly bad place, and the damage will be profound. Trump will trash the American government, rule of law, likely the economy, maybe vaccine progress, maybe the press, Ukraine, and maybe Taiwan and Palestine, and probably democracy and the Constitution. We'll find out, but that could only be a start. Like, Bruce Arthur, you're the person who is on a different world. You think that rural voters in the US have shifted? They've been Republican for a while, and they've just gotten a little bit more Republican. They still want small government, family values, get it out of my way. That's pretty much their entire voter like priority list when it comes to rural voters. That and like patriotism, good national security. And here's again, this is where, and so many of you will probably actually believe that what I'm about to say is not true about Trump and Ukraine, because there is so much liberal commentary that Trump's bad on Ukraine. Trump hates Ukraine, whatever. Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau are the heroes of Ukraine. You know that when Ukraine was invaded back in 2014, Obama gave them no offensive weapons, didn't do anything to Russia, basically didn't sanction them at all, like sanctioned a singular oligarch. So now he just has to pass money to somebody else to buy stuff for him in the US. Wow, what a big deal. When Trump became president, he actually started giving offensive weapons to Ukraine, Georgia, the Eastern Bloc countries, Finland, Sweden. He started upping the military budget. He was actually intimidating to Russia. When Biden became president in 2021, do you know that Biden immediately cut offensive weapons to Ukraine? He just said, no more Javelin missiles, no more artillery. I don't care. I'm slashing the military budget to pay for some other stupid entitlement in the US. And then he only restored the funding after the invasion started from Russia again. So there's the 2014 invasion that kind of stalemated. And then when the 22 invasion started, that's when Biden started kicking money into the Ukraine defense. Russia invaded because Biden basically signaled we're not going to defend them at all by cutting their funding and saying, yeah, we don't want a part of it. And if Russia makes a small incursion, we won't do anything. Oh my goodness. Trump's actual threat to Russia is back in the day was if you invade, I might hit your oil supplies. And Putin's like, you're not going to do that. And Trump's like, I might. And that's usually enough to keep people away. You know, Trump's actual plan on Ukraine, if you've actually heard it from national security advisors around him, is that he wants to triple the Ukraine funding unless Russia finds an off-ramp, which is actually the right way to negotiate. I know some people who are more anti-interventionists, they're like, well, you should just cut Ukraine's funding so that they'll negotiate for peace. Ukraine's the underdog in this scenario. If you cut their funding, Russia's going to be like, well, let's just bag the whole crowd down and keep pushing. They'll eventually run out of ammo. You actually have to make it harder for Russia to move forward. So then they have an excuse to then trade like the Kursk regions, where Ukraine gives back the Kursk regions it took a little bit here and there, and then Russia gives some of the Ukrainian regions back, and then we actually have peace. That's the practical nature of foreign policy. Regardless of who you personally think started it, you need a balance of power usually, and a way for both sides to claim minor victories in order to stop stuff. This is what Teddy Roosevelt did in the Russo-Japanese War back in 1903 or 1901 or something in that range, because both sides need to be able to pretend that they can claim victory, even if in that war Russia got absolutely destroyed by Japan. Anyways. But now let's move on to Greg McEachern, because I find this endlessly hilarious. So he's responding to Jeff Bezos saying, "Big congratulations to our 45th and now 47th president on an extraordinary political comeback and decisive victory. No nation has bigger opportunities. Wishing real Donald Trump all success in leading uniting of America we all love." And everyone's mad at Jeff Bezos because at the National Post, which he owns, he basically said, "You guys are not going to be issuing any sort of endorsement for candidates." I think he knew that Kamala Harris was probably falling apart. Why look embarrassing by endorsing this late? And so Greg McEachern, a liberal commentator and strategist who is on a lot of CBC panel, says, "How much money is enough money?" Kamala Harris outspent Donald Trump, and this is just campaign to campaign, not counting PACs, although PACs tend to be pretty equal on how much money they use. Kamala Harris spent almost three times as much money as Trump spent. She lost. Electoral college and probably a popular vote. What are you talking? Or is it now Greg McEachern's mad because, well, Jeff Bezos shilled out for the evil orange man and didn't let Washington Post give out the decisive endorsement that apparently would have clinched it for Kamala Harris if it was given. And now he's mad that Jeff Bezos has money. I don't know. Get good, Greg. Get good. Develop a talent, and maybe you can be as rich as Jeff Bezos. Oh my goodness, these people are 5 years old. Now, I just want to move on to the CBC, which had an absolute crazy night yesterday with just nutcase type takes on the election. Actually, first, let's just jump to this. You don't even really need to see it. So, Heather McPherson, the very pro-Hamas NDP MLA for, I believe, Edmonton Strathcona, it went to Wisconsin to do ballot observations in Wisconsin, I believe, for the Democrats, or at least watching the process. Why? Why are you doing this? If I was a conservative MP or MP candidate, I wouldn't be going to the U.S. to help out the Republicans. It's deeply inappropriate. Although I will give a shout out to, I'm not going to name them, but people who watch my channel, we met up a couple times when we were in BC at some events, and they went down to help out Charlie Kirk's organization go and get out the vote. And I believe it was Arizona or Pennsylvania. And they were actually in a video with Charlie Kirk saying that they came in from BC to help flip the states red, which is that's a lot of fun. Good job on you guys for getting involved. I always like when people get involved, and people are gonna be like, Wyatt, if I ever run for office at some point again, they're like, Wyatt, you like Trump better than Kamala Harris? Yes, he is a conservative candidate overall. Kamala Harris is a lefty progressive candidate. Why is this difficult to understand that a conservative might like the conservative candidate? But Wyatt, he said bad things sometimes. Yeah, I don't like bad things that he says. Well, he denied the 2020 election. Yeah, that wasn't a good thing to do. And with the 2020 election too, you got to understand, even right now, there is some Democrats going around saying that it was rigged or whatever. You're always going to have a bunch of people on one side saying it was rigged. And if you want to stop people from saying it's rigged, make sure the ballot counting happens faster so everything isn't crazy. Don't mass mail out ballots to people so then people start becoming worried that people didn't actually fill out the ballots themselves. If you want to avoid stuff like that in the future, do voting the way Florida did. Do voting in Canada the way Saskatchewan did. Don't do it like BC, who we still haven't gotten the judicial recounts for in places like Kelowna Centre and Surrey Guildford. Anyways, but now I just want to move on to the stuff that was going on the CBC. This was hilarious to me. I love it. This is my favorite thing. Maybe I'll go to the shorter version because there is a longer version of this clip, but we don't really want to be here for 2.5 minutes.
Well, there may not be many left after Trump decides he's going to round them up and deport everybody. I mean, this is the thing that really gives
but
me
is
pause.
that not to Kevin's
Not a
point?
difference between illegal and legal?
So I don't think anybody's illegal. Just
Here illegally?
Here illegally is different than calling people illegal. But
she's the Democratic commentator on the CBC panel, by the way, and he's a Republican. Well, who could have guessed why you lost when somebody is having normal concerns about illegal immigration and you say nobody's illegal as some gotcha, and then they have to say, so wait, you don't care if people enter the country illegally? She's like, oh, I do. You don't actually. Only when someone prompts you. The fact that you go to a stupid slogan like "nobody's illegal" proves why so much of the country just rejected the platform that Kamala Harris ran on, the character that she ran on. Like, I know she technically ran as a border hawk here, but the problem is her record is the "nobody's illegal" type sloganeering.
But, I'm just reminded of a time when there was authority to have internment camps and to round up Japanese people, and someone who is of Japanese descent. Um, when you say I have a concept of a plan, but I'm going to just start mass deporting people, what does that look like, and what does that mean logistically? Those are the things that I'm really interested.
What's she implying, that like Trump's going to line people up against a wall and shoot them? He's actually articulated this before. He's basically mostly going to be focusing on anyone with a criminal record and moving them out the country, and then probably then moving on to people, obviously not paying taxes or doing other, like people who are basically living on the streets and don't have homes, and they obviously shouldn't be in the US, especially if they're not citizens. Probably stuff like that. Like, but the idea that we can keep it just implying that he might do something evil is ludicrous.
Interested in the first 100 days of really understanding what the plan is, right? You can't just go around and make these blanket statements. Well, they're making.
He actually has, but the thing is, these people haven't been watching at all. It really hasn't just been blanket statements. The funny thing is, Trump's not a very complicated guy in the sense he doesn't like to talk about nitty gritty policy, but he was the one who was giving more detail than even Kamala Harris was. It was embarrassing for her. Nobody could tell what her platform was the entire time. Here's another clip from the CBC panel. This is the really unhinged one.
The argument J.D. Vance has made subsequently is that, okay, well,
and by the way, in this clip, they're talking about why was the 2020 election like Trump thought it was rigged, and he's saying, well, J.D. Vance's defense of that is when things like the Hunter Biden laptop story are suppressed, and there's mass mail invalidating, and there's it's taking forever to count. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of people say, well, that felt unfair.
Might not have been rigged at the ballot box, but they did suppress a laptop that would have changed votes. We know that. They did change voting rules all over the place.
That's not true. Let's not spread misinformation on air. That's not true.
It's absolutely true.
True.
We have public polling for it.
That's not true, which is why there's been no litigation around it and no one's been held liable for that.
How do you hold people liable for that? That what? The whole point was that there was just obvious media and FBI collusion, and this has been proven that there was FBI just telling the media and social media companies that the laptop story is fake. There's all the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign without evidence other than just pure speculation. And so they ended up killing a story that could have potentially affected the outcome of an election. And that was a government institution doing that. That's a problem. And again, sometimes crap happens. People do stuff, and that's not exactly why you lose races, but that's going to make people feel like it's unfair when, even if there was a well-meaning FBI agent who truly thought it was Russian disinformation, you generally shouldn't be sticking your finger into an election unless you are bulletproof sure that something is literally a fake story and you can prove it.
There's been absolutely no.
I'm talking about a media narrative story. I'm not talking about actually rigging of an election. That's the J.D. Vance argument. I'm just giving you J.D. Vance's argument. But yeah, you're right. It does undermine, it does create long-term problems for the Republican Party to not believe in the vote, the voting system that has been set up. Some of the states have taken action. Georgia's fixed up, their system a bit. What they all need to do, and I don't know why they don't do this, is just call Jeb Bush and have him come in and do what he did to Florida, and just do that in your state.
Let's talk about exactly the question that you're asking is one that I've been catching a lot of heat for answering.
This is the really unhinged moment
on air, and we've been talking about this in the last week or two. You're talking about the propaganda campaign and the playbook of Trump. This is not new. This is not surprising. This is directly out of Hitler's playbook. This is out of an autocrat playbook. This is a way to,
what's out of Hitler's playbook? I guess technically Hitler also won an election, so that means Trump's going out of Hitler's playbook. Hitler was a big ally of Israel? What was Hitler was a national socialist. I'm pretty sure last time I checked that Trump is not a big government, top-down economic control, militarism type guy. I don't see what their problem here is. It's just words.
The things that Trump has done masterfully, frankly, is to get the entire, to get a big part of the population to believe that the game is rigged and to sow distrust in public institutions and the free press. That is a tried and true playbook that we have seen time and time before that has resulted in really disastrous things for society. And that is what's working. And so it's actually quite simple. When you tell a big enough lie over and over and over, people are going to believe it, even when...
What was the big enough lie? Well, like, actually, what was the big enough lie? That, like, America, like, unless she's claiming that, like, saying that American, like, the free press is very biased to the left, that our institutions basically just perpetuate themselves and they're not actually looking out for your best interests and whatnot. How is that, like, the big, what's the big lie here? Trump does actually lie quite a bit. They're all usually soft, small, stupid lies. Like, he will lie about crowd size. It's dumb. Or he'll lie about doing something embarrassing 10 years ago. Who's going to, like, admit to being an adulterer when you're running for president? And obviously he was in the past. But, like, what's his, like, really, yeah, the 2020 election thing, that was, like, if anything, that one probably hurt him, because it probably kept some people home, because they're like, what's the point of voting? Because they're going to print ballots anyways. And that's just not what happens in 2020. Anyways, but yeah, like, and it was really just mass mail-in voting. It was a gamified 2020 election where the Democrats have a better ballot harvesting operation. Ergo, they were able to win some of these states by, like, very thin margins. And obviously, to a lot of Republicans observing, that feels deeply unfair, because it wasn't like you got really passionate voters out to vote for you. You kept going back to someone's house until they're like, sure, I'll just mark Biden, leave me alone. Because they had an unprecedented amount of ballots in 2020 where they only marked the presidential candidate and that was it. Even though you could have just kept going down the list and just marking, like, Democrat candidates, it makes it super easy to vote down a single slate. And, like, hundreds of thousands of people in specific states were not voting for anyone but the president.
And folks around him, like Rudy Giuliani and others, have literally been found liable for telling those lies that weren't true. The public still believes it. And the whole goal was to erode trust in our public institutions, and it's working. Fake news. If anything, that's what fake news. I mean, Donald Trump has done that really well. Can't argue with that, right?
Why are all these people just looking at her stone face like this is just normal? This is so unhinged. Why do people wonder why the CBC's panelists weren't able to detect the appeal of Pierre Poilievre? Because they're in such a bubble. They're like, well, Kamala Harris lost? Well, probably lies. And, there was probably a bunch of lies out there. That's why she lost. She was fantastic. How could she have lost? It was because of the lies. The lies is because Kamala Harris doesn't lie, obviously. Oh, my goodness. These people are so tired. Here's another one. Thanks for Rachel Parker for taking a photo of this headline from Andrew Coyne, a fake conservative commentator. And she says, give it a rest already. And it's a headline from Andrew Coyne saying, Trump's election is a crisis like no other, not only for the U.S., but for the world. Oh, my goodness. Here's a video from Frank Dominic. And I think he actually makes a better case for why the Democrats lost the election than most. But I still want to just talk about it, because I find even his perspective on it, as a more lefty guy, that the Democrats were not lefty enough is quite humorous.
Kamala Harris ran an awful campaign, and the message that progressives and liberals are going to take from this is that they have to move more to the right. That is the absolutely wrong thing to be doing. The political strategy that we should be learning from this event is not that wokeism or left-wing ideas aren't going to win, because Kamala was not a left-wing politician.
Literally rated in 2019 as the most liberal senator in the Senate. More than Bernie Sanders. When you actually, exit polls showed, and exit polls can be off, I know, but these were pretty big margins, that 36% of people thought that Trump was too conservative. I think it was like 48% or like something like that thought Kamala Harris was too liberal. It's not because they've been lied to or anything like that. There's all this lying going on. No, it's because she was too liberal. And the funny thing is that, like, the thing is, the media can't do this whole, like, this was a white lash or whatever. It's white voters who voted for Trump. In fact, white women voted for Kamala Harris more than they actually even voted for Joe Biden. I think Trump had 55% of white women in 2020, and now he only had like 51 or 52. It was black voters and Latino voters who actually elected Donald Trump this time.
What we need to learn from this is that big, audacious goals, big claims, and big promises are what get people to vote when they are on the margins of the undecided or maybe won't vote. People think that there's an issue with illegal migrants in the U.S. Kamala said border security. Trump said deport millions. Wow.
You know what? I'm actually going to give Frank Dominic some credit here. He is partially right. And I've said this before when it comes to the New Brunswick election and why Blaine Higgs lost. Blaine Higgs was a good premier. He ran a boring campaign, though. It was saying a 2% HST cut. Oh my goodness, who cares? You cut HST and then you run on a 2% income tax cut. And then people are like, oh my goodness, he'll actually do it. He cut HST, so he'll probably cut income tax as well. That's how you run a campaign. But he is right that you need an audacious idea to run on. I've used those exact words before. You need a big, audacious idea to run on. Kamala Harris wouldn't articulate any ideas after her initial launch because her first big, audacious ideas were too far left. So it doesn't just have to be an audacious idea. It also has to be something that's doable, realistic, and doesn't freak people out. So deporting illegal criminal migrants is not something that anyone thinks is extreme. It's actually very in the middle, but it is still a big, audacious idea because most people wouldn't run on that. And Harris, the problem is she came out with a wealth tax. She came out saying that we're going to give everyone a $25,000 down payment on their house if you buy a first time. And it's like, that's just going to inflate housing prices. That's the bubble all over again, the housing bubble all over again. There's a few other things she wanted to do that just made her seem very out of touch, very San Francisco left, anti-price gouging laws, pretending that it's grocery stores, just like Jagmeet Singh in Canada, that it's grocery stores price gouging people. And it's just not the fact that like the inflation is crazy because we keep printing money and increasing spending. But I'll give Frank this, that generally speaking, Trump had the big ideas that people could actually wrap their hands around, and they knew what he was running on. You couldn't tell what Kamala was running on.
That sounds awful. It is still something that is big, it is audacious, and it sounds like something will get done because Kamala kept pushing forward the status quo. People are upset about the war in Israel. Kamala said, bring the hostages home. Trump said, we're going to end the war. How? Doesn't matter. Abortion's a huge issue. Trump said, leave it up to the states. And Kamala didn't really promise much.
Well, that is the status quo position from Trump, to be fair. And she actually wanted to bring back Roe v. Wade, so I think he just wasn't paying attention. So in a certain sense, she had the big audacious idea on that front. But the problem is more Americans are far more pro-life than the media and commentators think. Yes, they might not vote for a full-on abortion ban in a specific state, and we can even see places like Kansas reject ballot initiatives for a full ban. But that doesn't mean that people want ninth month abortions back on the federal level that any state can do, or every state has to have up to at least 24 weeks or 16 weeks or whatever.
Even when they did promise bigger things like legalization, they kind of swept it under the rug. It wasn't a big talking point. Typically, most people know what party they want.
Because the marijuana legalization stuff was, or was that about abortion still? I think it was. But regardless, he might have been talking about abortion there. But she did the pot legalization thing. But it was like 3 days before the election. It was like a move where you could tell her and her advisors were like really sweaty and desperate when they announced that one. They just thought like, oh my goodness, we just need like to win some of our base back, and it just didn't work.
Want to vote for. And a lot of people aren't looking at the nuances of a plan or a policy to figure out where they're going to vote. People want to see ambition, they want to see confidence, and they want to see change. The US economy is doing good, but they are also going through a vibe session. Same with Canada. People feel down, and so that actually drags down the economy.
No, the economy is legitimately bad. But Frank, because he is on the left and he doesn't want to admit that lefty governance, even if it's from like Joe Biden, who he probably would consider too right or whatever, he still wants to pretend that actually things are better, and Republicans and conservatives in Canada are exploiting exploiting your bad feelings to pretend like it's a bad economy. No, the economy does suck. GDP going up does not mean per capita GDP isn't going down. That's what's happening currently in Canada, and things are stagnant in the US, even if raw GDP is going up. People are not actually getting ahead. Anyways, so I want to move on to a different video, just because that was going to become a little more repetitious. Here's Justin Trudeau congratulating Donald Trump on his victory, and then I want to talk about the implications of the things that him and Jagmeet Singh have been saying over the past year. I think I do also have a clip of Jagmeet Singh talking.
First, I want to congratulate Donald on a decisive victory last night. I look forward to working with President Trump once again to strengthen North American economic opportunities for the middle class, to grow our economies in ways that make us competitive around the world, to protect North America from the many, many challenges that exist around the world. The world is actually even more difficult and more complicated than it was 4 years ago. And I know that there's lots of work for us to do. I'm looking forward to do it. On our side, we've been preparing for this. We're looking forward to doing this work.
I'm sorry, but were they preparing for this? I'm about to have to get to what he was doing before all this and how he was preparing, but oh my goodness, no, you were not preparing.
And we're going to make sure that this extraordinary friendship and alliance between Canada and the United States continues to be a real benefit to Canadians, but also to people around the world.
Okay. I need to quickly pull this down. I want to see if I have the Jagmeet Singh clip. If I have the Jagmeet Singh clip, that's fantastic. I want it right now. No, let's go to the. Oh, no, I'll do this one after. Okay, I don't need to show you the Jagmeet Singh clip. He's like, oh yes, congratulations, Donald Trump won, but there's a lot of Canadians hurting over this. Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau and the rest of the Liberals kept calling the Conservatives maple MAGA, far-right, fascist, extreme, that Pierre Poilievre's like Trump, and that means he's evil and bad. We're about to have to do trade negotiations with the guy that you've been saying your opposition is evil because they are like him in some way. Thanks, idiots. What are we doing? Why would you ever do that? Never wade into another country's elections or labeling who you like and who you don't like, unless it's like, we're talking about like a full-on dictatorship. Yeah, we don't have to say nice things about Assad in Syria. Fair enough. Yeah, you don't have to say nice things about him. Don't need to say nice things about the Iranian leadership. Got it. Fine. Canada, you don't say whether or not you like people or don't like people. Doug Ford also looks like a moron. Congratulating Tim Walz on becoming the Democratic nominee. That wasn't as bad as what Trudeau and Singh did, obviously, but don't say anything. You're a Canadian elected politician. Say nothing, because you are about to negotiate with them and you don't have the amount of distance. You don't have a lot of distance between what you just said and when they enter office where they can say, it was something he said 5 years ago. This is what you said less than a year ago about Trump, saying that just like Pierre Poilievre's an evil far-right person because he's like him. You're so flipping disconnected. Here is, okay, actually, I just want to quickly talk about this. There is a lot of lefty election denial already going on. And I'm saying this because I actually understand the emotion. There's a lot of people who get really upset when they lose. So let's not attack people who immediately say, I don't believe it. Because sometimes, legitimately, the emotional space you were in, you weren't going to believe an outcome that wasn't a victory, even though you should have prepared yourself. So this guy, Neil Lombard, says a recount is not enough. Demand a revote and an investigation into election interference by Russia in swing states that previously went to President Biden. Both Biden and Harris and other prominent voices need to support this motion. And naturally, this happens when you've been saying that Trump's Adolf Hitler 2.0, and naturally, if he wins, how could he have won? He is a fascist. Who would vote for a fascist? It's almost like he wasn't. And especially, I don't know how he was like a fascist, like people kept saying. Fascism is authoritarian trade unionism. In fact, technically trade unionism. And trade unionism isn't that you like unions. Trade unionism is the belief that unions should run the entire economy. Like they should own the brick and mortar that the work is going on with, not just controlling the labor. So that's what fascism, syndicalism, trade unionism is. So it was kind of weird when they kept saying that Trump's trade unionist. But stuff like that's going on, and I guarantee there's not going to be a lot of call-outs from the left on stuff like that. Let's look over here now at, okay, I got to highlight this. It's a great comment. You know what? Does it feel wrong that I don't have his piece of literature behind me right now? Whatever. Brian will recover. But I used to have, I've replaced him with Lawrence Mock right here. But Brian Burgay, the BC Conservative candidate for Vancouver-Langara and a great friend, he says, low IQ people. Trump is underestimated in the polls. High IQ. No, but you don't understand. Polls are now overestimating Trump. Trust me, look at 2022. Also look at the Seltzer poll. Never wrong. Plus enthusiasm, dude. And obviously he is making fun of so many both American and Canadian lefty commentators who think that you're an idiot for thinking that the polls are once again going to underestimate Donald Trump, which they actually still underestimated him by like a point or two in most of these states. Not as much because I think polls did correct. But you were considered a very nuanced commentator to say, actually, in 2022, the Republicans actually underperformed their polls, even though Trump wasn't on the ticket. And so that's why Ann Seltzer might be onto something, that in Iowa, she's going to win by 3, even though she now has a 17-point miss in that race. It's crazy. And the thing is, the crosstabs should have told Ann Seltzer that she was wrong. Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, I think he does a really good polling-based show in the U.S. If you guys ever want to hear about U.S. polls, go look up Richard Barris, the People's Pundit on YouTube, and you can find him. He was pointing out Ann Seltzer's poll, when you looked at the crosstabs of who she was polling and where they were from and what they said were their top issues, there was like threat to democracy was the top issue in Iowa in her poll, and then followed by like economy, then abortion, with the economy only having like 20% of people who cared about it. That's not like, what did you pull? A Starbucks lineup in Portland? You should look at that and think, my poll's off, I'm not releasing this. But Ann Seltzer did anyways, probably because, frankly, she probably knew her work was bad, but hey, it's an honest mistake, and this might actually help Kamala Harris out. Here's a good one. Here's one. Actually, no. Let's go to Chrystia Freeland now. Here is the thing that undermines the whole Justin Trudeau saying, "Oh, I congratulate Donald on his victory," when all of the Liberal and NDP politicians are now going to come out and say, "I know so many people are crushed and dismayed."
So, hi everyone. Good afternoon. Let me start by congratulating President-elect Trump and his team on a truly historic election victory. I and the Prime Minister and our colleagues are looking forward to working together with them.
Are you?
The Canada-US partnership is absolutely fundamental to the economies of both of our countries. And we have really effective experience working together with a number of US administrations and with this specific team.
No, you actually messed up. The trade negotiations for the USMCA were so messed up by our Canadian negotiators like Chrystia Freeland. They messed up so badly. And do you know why? Because Canada under Trudeau has become an anti-energy administrated country, that we do not support our own energy industry. If we actually want to win in a trade negotiation with the US, where maybe trade barriers go down on both sides and it becomes a freer market, or that maybe we get some advantages out of it, is if we didn't shut down the Keystone XL pipeline when Trump was president. Maybe we'd have a better bargaining situation, position, if we actually had the Keystone XL pipeline. I know that Biden then also canceled it when he came into office, but we had 4 years where we could have gotten it done. And for some reason, we didn't. Oh my goodness. And it was our fault. It was our fault at that time.
And have really built some enduring relationships. I would even say friendships. So we're looking forward to continuing to work together for the prosperity and the security of people on both sides of our shared border. And I do want to say, because we live so close to the United States, I know a lot of Canadians were very absorbed in the US election. I know there are a lot of Canadians who are feeling unsettled today. And I want to say to all Canadians that I am absolutely confident that Canada will be prosperous, that Canadians will be safe.
Why are you saying any of this? You can't say, I congratulate Donald Trump on his victory. We've had good relationships in the past. I think that's going to carry forward, and say, I know a lot of our people are dismayed, but I'm going to guarantee, don't worry, Trump's not going to run over the border and beat you to death with a stick. Stop even acknowledging that there are lefty people in Canada who hate Donald Trump. Stop it. It's bad for our negotiating position. Just zip your lip, congratulate whoever wins the election, and then move on and start talking about your own business. But the base of the Liberal Party is so left that she has to say this probably, or they're going to be upset. Like, oh, why didn't you acknowledge? Why didn't you acknowledge that he's literally the devil in your press conference? I'm going to finish this one off, this episode of the show off, with just this take from Max Fawcett, which I find he's one of those guys who's like nuanced on the left, but in this sort of fake way where, like, when you actually dig down to it, it's still just unhinged lefty socialist rhetoric. Here's Max Fawcett, who also, I believe, has gotten upset with me in the past when I've said he's a socialist or he's very socialistic. He says, as Canadians, there's nothing we can do to change that. but we can start to prepare for the consequences. That means building more robust defenses for our economy. Sorry, are you talking about tariffs or like economic controls? Defenses. We actually don't need to build defenses. We need a freer market with lower taxes. Our cultural institutions and our information ecosystems. It means finding ways to depend less on the American neighbors wherever possible. And it means supporting the things that enhance our political resilience against Trump-style demagoguery at home, from public education to proper regulations on social media companies. America may one day recover, at least partially, from the toxic influence of Trumpism. But as this election has made abundantly clear, we can no longer afford to take that for granted. What? What? Oh, we have to censor people because Trump sometimes personally attacks people. We have to have more regulations and tariffs or subsidies or whatever, because I know that Trump likes tariffs, but he tends to usually just tariff countries that are actual like national security competitors like China. If we lower a tariff here, they might lower a tariff here. We can negotiate this stuff out. It's literally not the end of the world. The only way that it's actually going to hurt our economy is if our politicians remain stupid and they keep making Canada a worse and worse place to invest. The real reason that Trump's America might eat Canada's lunch economically is because our politicians are incompetent. They keep taxes high. They keep regulations high. It's impossible to build new homes. And that doesn't mean we need blanket rezoning. It just means that when you do build something, it shouldn't take a long time to do it. It shouldn't take thousands of pieces of paperwork in order to get it done. If we actually fix up our own economy and get competitive, we shouldn't be scared at all. We're scared because our leadership is stupid, because they think that we can just because they think more about the public tax revenues more than people's actual spending power, more than people's actual prosperity. That is the problem in Canada. We have government, we have people in the media, politicians, bureaucrats who don't give a rip about the average person anymore. And now they're like, oh my goodness, Trump might destroy us on with tariffs and our economy. It wouldn't even matter, even if he was just going to tariff us. If we just lowered taxes, we would survive. We'd be fine. And I don't think he's going to throw a lot of tariffs on Canada. But goodness, lower taxes, guys. Just do something. Stop subsidizing the EV industry and taking taxpayer money away to do it. Let people invest their own money in things that are actually productive. My goodness. Anyways, that's it for me today, guys. Long episode of the show. Hopefully you guys don't mind it, but there was a lot of stuff to talk about today. A lot of rants for me to get out. So if you want, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not currently subscribed. If you've made it this far and you weren't a subscriber, I salute you, because you're 47 minutes into me just rambling on. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment. I always try and skim through them. I try and take some influence from them in the next episodes. Especially, I usually figure out how to pronounce words because of people sounding them out for me in the comments when I don't get it right, especially names. Polish names are my bane, so throwing stuff in there really helps me out. And if you want to support the show, you can donate to our legal fund, the Give, Send, Go link in the description below, as well as at the top of the comments. And then I also have my website there, WyattClaypool.com, where there's a contact form you can sign up with if you ever want my recommendations for nomination races or leadership races, both federally and provincially across the country. I want to be able to actually let you guys know good races to get involved with. So this isn't just a channel where I talk at you and then you walk away and you wonder how we actually fix anything in Canada. I can actually give you recommendations on the most conservative people you can vote for, the most the most electable and conservative candidates in any given race. We got 2 leadership races coming up in Manitoba and New Brunswick at some point in the future. And so that will be areas where if you live there, definitely sign up, because then I can tell you who I like, who I don't like in these different races, people who are interesting, people who you might want to watch out for in negative ways. Anyways, but that's it for me today. Have a good one, everyone.